to the Weird Warriors podcast. I'm Max.
I'm Rich.
And on this podcast, we will be focusing on the Weird War Tales comic book series published by DC Comics from 1971 to 1983. On this episode in particular, we are taking a look at Weird War Tales number 54. But first, Rich is going to come over and say a little something to you before we get started.
We got a little retroactive history, but we're going to wait until we get to the intro panel CNC. Yes, spoiler alert, we have another intro panel, Max's favorite part of the book. Intel Report, Graveyard of Empires, a 4-issue miniseries published by Image Comics in 2011. Written by Mark Sable, art by Paul Azaceta. Afghanistan, an undermanned Marine outpost continues to be ready to face the Taliban. Between the occasional bombing, sweeping of opiate farms, and not killing each other, a new threat looms on the horizon. When cultures clash and enemies seek each other out, there is bound to be mistrust and animosity. But the undead horde that is descending upon them cares little for the politics of mortal man, just their blood. And don't forget to go to the Intel Report album on the FB page and message us your selection for what story you want us to do a special mission on. Vote early, vote often. If there's a tie, we'll do a runoff. Cover detail. Art by first and only timer, regrettably, U.S. Army veteran Gray Morrow, 35 cents. Price hike. We have the classic Army Men Green Weird War Tales title at the top of the cover. Charging away from an explosion atop a terrified gray horse. A cavalryman wearing a red jacket and blue pants waves a sword. His head is a burning skull, and twin beams shoot out of his eyes and strike a man in the cover's foreground. That man reels in pain and drops a pistol. Between them, a woman in a purple dress throws up her arms to shield herself from the demon. In red on a yellow banner at the bottom of the cover reads, "The Soldier of Satan." Cover date, July 1977, date of release, April 12th, 1977. Killjoy, saving that for the first story as well. Max, take it away.
Comments and commendations on this cover. I will kick it off and say that I generally love and have always loved Gray Morrow's work. And I was excited when I realized that he was contributing this issue's cover. However, this is ultimately a cluttered mess. Every element, because it's Gray Morrow, is exceptionally well drawn, but as a cover, there's just too many pieces competing for our eye's attention. For one, or several things, there's a surplus of figures. We really just needed the horseman and his victim here, especially at the size they're drawn. Speaking of the horseman, his laser eyes look a little bit too much like something you'd see on a superhero cover rather than a horror book for me. The black space up top near the logo works well, though, to balance out the drawing and the bright colors down below. But the excellently chosen title, Soldier of Satan, has to settle for a very boring-looking logo for its own part down at the bottom. Overall, I count this as a rare flop from Morrow that needed a stronger editorial hand. Also, just before recording, I was taking another look at the cover, and I was realizing I've noticed recently how heavily photo-referenced Gray Morrow's work tends to be. And that kind of brings it down a notch for me. It pulls me out of feeling like I'm looking at a character in a scene as opposed to a light-boxed photograph. I do, however, get a huge kick out of, as Rich mentioned, just how terrified that horse looks, though. That is pretty unintentionally hilarious, and I got to give the cover points for that.
Shades of the Headless Horseman? Or more likely Ghost Rider. This is a very busy cover, lots to look at, with noteworthy detail work throughout. Have to admit that my comics preferences are fairly laser focused, and I'm not too familiar with Gray Morrow's work because of the titles and publishers he often appeared in. But hey, it's great to see him appear here, if only once. The only big gripe I have, I can excuse because of the tie-in with the story inside. This is the cover of a horror comic, folks. My small gripe is the way the pistol perfectly lines up on the clothing of the man who dropped it. The blue of the gun barrel blends in with his coat and pants, and the butt kind of vanishes into the ground and boot of the dead horseman. Like I said, very busy, or as Max puts better, a cluttered mess. Moving on to the aforementioned introduction panel. Script by Paul Levitz, pencils by Frank Redondo, inks, according to the Grand Comics database, by Jerry Tlayak. We'll get back to that. Synopsis. A green-robed death with a slung rifle, ammo bandolier, and GI helmet holds a quill in one bony hand and a debit-credit sheet in the other, watching over a battle. In the distance behind him, a formation of bombers drop their payloads. 2 tanks fire at the attacking Americans in the foreground. Some are taking cover, but 2 others have been blown off their feet by exploding shells. Death says,
War is a fight for life. Yet those who do not win that fight must be tallied along with the weapons they do battle with. I am death, and every man, be he victor or fallen, must be accounted for in my book. Their lives are but pen strokes on these eternal pages. Come, follow me unto the battlefield of these weird wars, and see, regardless of the outcome, a balance must be struck.
no Killjoy. Moving on to the CNC. This is a fantastic intro page. I could stare at this all day. The GI in the foreground alone being blown backwards by an explosion, losing his helmet and rifle as shrapnel shreds his uniform is incredible. This should be in a Sergeant Rock story. Wait, Redondo pencils? It probably is. Death, his helmet breaking the panel border and wearing army green, overseeing it only adds to the awesomeness of the page. This could damn well be the best intro panel we've seen in the run so far. Great start. That being said, this is not Jerry T. art. If you look at the bottom of the panel, you plainly see the initials RT. Romeo Tanghal, perhaps? His first credited art in the US was in Batman 284, February 1977, only a couple months before this issue. So it's very possible a quick intro page for a new Philippine artist could have been overlooked by GCD. Officially, Tanghal appears for the first time in these pages next issue, doing the intro, and the art is very similar. Examples of his handwriting also line up. So I'm calling it, welcome to the show, Romeo Tanghal. Along a similar vein, as forewarned, the Grand Comics database says Jose Luis Garcia Lopez did the art for the cover of issue 48, and both Max and I slagged on it. But a different source suggests it was actually Ernie Chan art. You take a step back and you compare the art for JLGL and Chan for that time period, and I'm much more inclined to believe that Chan actually did the cover, not JLGL. So an apology may be in order if we can get that definitively hammered down. For the record, JLGL and Ernie Chan's wiki pages do not list number 48 among their WWT work, but we all know Wikipedia is far from perfect.
Well, as for my take on this intro page, we are in agreement. Again, folks, this intro page is indeed awesome. I love the host and his ledger of death, as well as his combo of robes and army gear. Also standing in for the series mixture of horror and war genres. I decide as I overanalyze the picture, the bombers up top in the background and the carnage resulting below just tie it all together and set a heck of a tone for what's to come. As for the RT signature, could it stand for Redondo Tlayak? Stretch in there on purpose. I do think you're more likely to be right about that, although, Rich. It's an excellent rebound from the cover here. And let's see if that rebound continues as we, reluctantly turn away from this intro page to the first story. It's the cover story. It's called Soldier of Satan. It is Soldier of Satan. It is 8 pages long. Script is by the indomitable Jack Olek. Art is by Abe Ocampo. Synopsis for this story goes like this. In the midst of a cavalry charge towards Confederate positions, a nearby explosion from a cannonball blows Mason from his horse. He is blinded by the blast, and the medics are quick to bandage his eyes and send him to the hospital. The bitterness festers and grows as he lies in bed, and he lashes out at the nurse when she asks if he is feeling better. Better? You're the nurse who tends this ward, aren't you? Only a woman would ask such a stupid question. Get away from me. The doctor intercedes on her behalf, but Mason only continues. She's just like all women, always ordering me around, taking advantage because she knows I can't see. The doctor has already tired of Mason's complaints and orders him to his feet. The bandages are coming off today. Soon, Mason will find out if he truly has a reason to feel so sorry for himself. A bitter, frightened little man like Mason deserves no favors from fate, but he gets one anyway. His sight is returned. In a few days, he could return to his unit. No, doctor, he whimpers, don't send me back. I can't go back. If I do, I'll be killed. I know it. God saw fit to spare you, the doctor patiently explains. What kind of man are you anyway? You should be thanking him. Don't talk to me about your God, Mason snaps. He's the one who's doing this to me. But I want to live. I'd rather serve the devil than God if that will keep me alive. The doctor left, leaving only the nurse to try to console her charge. You don't mean that, trooper. I understand you're overwrought, but you have to go back. It's your duty. I'm not interested in duty. I'm interested in just one thing. Myself. Mason's despair turned to hate as he saw the nurse for the first time, an older, portly woman. Don't talk to me about duty, you old sow. What do you know about it? Twin red beams shoot from Mason's eyes and strike the nurse. To his amazement, the nurse instantly transforms into a pig. It isn't possible, but he'd thought of her as an old sow, and that's what she became. Almost as if the devil had heard what he said. Satan had given him the power to change people with his eyes, maybe even kill. Hopping out a window, Mason makes his escape. Picking his way through the forest, he discovers a band of Union cavalry watering their horses, but something is odd about them. He quickly figures out that they are actually bandits that raid local towns, but before he can decide what to do, he is apprehended by one of their guards and brought before the horseman's commander. The captain immediately decides that Mason is a spy and pulls out his pistol. Realizing what is about to happen, Mason panics. Again, twin beams shoot from his eyes. The other bandits are horrified as the captain is killed, burned to a crisp. Seeing the superstitious awe on their faces, Mason takes advantage. From now on, I'm your captain. If any of you think differently, just say so. I'm waiting. You think you've done well for yourselves before? Follow me, obey me, and I'll make you really rich. And the bandits did obey. A dozen towns were looted with Mason's demonic gaze. He usually just killed with it, but seeing an old man scurry away during one raid, Mason decides to have some fun and turns him into a rabbit. His men don't understand. None of the towns had fought back. There was no reason for him to kill. It pleases me, he haughtily exclaims when asked. It's my way of paying a debt I owe to Satan. No one dares challenge him. Rounding up the townspeople, Mason demands the mayor to turn over all their money and valuables or else. But they had no valuables. Other raiders had already cleaned them out. But there is a house on the top of a nearby hill that the other raiders had never bothered with for some reason. A lone woman lives there, Elizabeth Court, and she's supposed to have a fortune. Mason accepts the information and goes to pay Miss Court a visit. He wastes no time on his arrival, grabbing her by the hair and threatening her with a knife as he demands to know where her fortune is. She insists that she has no fortune. The war has taken everything. A younger soldier runs up to stop Mason, who releases Elizabeth. I'll give you time to think about it. We'll be your guests for a few days until you make up your mind. As Elizabeth walks away, the soldier apologizes to Mason for interfering, noting how pretty she is. Pretty? You fool! She won't charm me. I know women. We'll wait. We'll have her fortune before we leave, or she'll wish she'd never been born. 3 days pass, and Mason's hatred of women continues to simmer. It's the discovery of the young soldier sitting under a tree with Elizabeth pleasantly chatting that sends Mason over the edge. He rushes over, grabs her by the wrists, and hauls her to her feet. I've wasted enough time around here. Where do you hide your money, your jewels? Tell me! But, Captain, she has nothing. She told me. Elizabeth, too, continues to insist that she has no jewels. Enraged, Mason slaps her. Liar! You're like every other woman. You wouldn't know how to tell the truth. Elizabeth Court is a proud woman of the Old South, and her reaction is expected. You struck me! How dare you! You lout! I'll scratch your eyes out for that. She lunges at Mason, who catches her wrist with his hands. So, the lady isn't a lady after all, eh? She's a cat. Very well, then. If you want to be a cat you will be. Mason's eyes do their evil work, transforming the beautiful Southern belle into a black cat. No, Captain, the soldier exclaims. I love her. Change her back, you devil. I warn you, change her back. You warn me? You? Why, you? A young trooper pulls out a pistol and fires. If you think you're going to use your eyes on me, too, you're wrong. Maybe I can't make you change your back, but I can make you pay. Die, curse you, die! Bullet glances off Mason's forehead and knocks him to the ground. As the soldier storms off, Mason realizes that he lost the power. Worse, he was paralyzed. His men owe him no loyalty or allegiance and leave him behind as they ride off. But he isn't alone. Elizabeth Court was nearby. Mason could only watch in silent horror as the cat walked up to him and reached for his eyes with her claws. Satan always demands payment for services rendered. And in this case, what could be more appropriate a price than an eye for an eye?
Killjoy. History Minute. I foreshadowed this on the cover, but if not for the narrator saying this took place in the Civil War, I would have thought this took place in Europe. The red-purple uniform jackets threw me off that much. I even did some research to see if it could have been a 1861 Zouave uniform or something. Nope. Should have stuck to blue for the whole uniform. Fire the colorists! Page 2, panels 1 and 3, you see medics and nurses wearing red crosses on their uniforms. Wrongo. Born December 25th, 1821 in North Oxford, Massachusetts, Clara Barton was the fifth child of Stephen and Sarah Barton. After an early career teaching, Clara moved to Washington, D.C. and worked at the U.S. Patent Office. She was one of the first women to work for the federal government. Clara was still living in Washington when the American Civil War began in 1861. During that time, she bravely provided nursing care and supplies to soldiers, activities that ultimately defined her life and earned her the nickname Angel of the Battlefield. When the war ended, Clara found new ways to help the military. With permission from President Lincoln, she opened the Office of Missing Soldiers, helping to reconnect more than 20,000 soldiers with their families. During a trip to Switzerland in 1869, Clara learned about the Red Cross movement, a European humanitarian effort to provide mutual aid to those injured in combat. Inspired by that cause, Clara volunteered with the International Committee of the Red Cross, providing civilian relief during the Franco-Prussian War. This experience, along with her work during the Civil War, inspired Clara to bring the Red Cross movement to America. On May 21st, 1881, 20 years after the Civil War began, Clara founded the American Red Cross, and by 1882, the U.S. ratified the Geneva Conventions, laws that, to this day, protect the war wounded and civilians in conflict zones. This later resulted in a U.S. congressional charter officially recognizing Red Cross services. Clara Barton served as Red Cross president for 23 years, retiring in 1904. After a lifetime of service, Clara died at her home in Glen Echo, Maryland, on April 12, 1912.
Well, damn. And once again, I don't read the history minutes before we record because I want them to sort of hit me like they would a listener. And And if Rich has told me any of these stories, you know I either wasn't listening or I forgot. So but that is amazing. Like you hear about like you see it in comic books or Captain America will say, well, the firefighters are the real heroes and blah blah blah, and it's all shallow pablum. But you hear a story of someone's life like that, and it's like, yeah, that's that's more heroic than anything someone with a super soldier serum and an unbreakable shield could lay claim to, because she ain't got those affirmations or things to fall back on. So hey, that could be the end right there as far as I'm concerned. But instead, we will fake soldier on, in my case, and kick off the comments and commendations for this story. And I'll say, speaking of kicking things off, we do that with a nice host rendition and a better logo for the title than the cover provided, but that barely two-tone background in the intro panel below leaves it all looking too empty, even with the very well-drawn figures and horses populating the rest of the scene. And horses ain't easy, people. So that's great drawing, but it's an empty-looking panel. The panel below it is much better designed, though. And on page 2, Mr. Mason is set up quite expediently as a sniveling, craven villain with all his whimpering and begging and openly sexist behavior, so that's nice, storytelling-wise. Panels 5 through 7, though, are so crowded with word balloons that even Chris Claremont might look at them sideways. Over on page 3, the dreaded reading direction arrows that I hate so much make an appearance, always a sign of sloppy storytelling. Even if panel 3 gives us a great drawing of an understandably and very expressively startled pig. It's the second animal related to this issue with a really awesomely expressive face. You got the horse on the cover and you got this pig. It's almost worth the price right there, just those two drawings. And panel 2 of page 4, we then get a very unexciting drawing of a man being burned alive by Satanic super sight. Come on, that should have been a much more exciting image. But panel 5's two-stage rabbit transformation does a lot to make up for that. It's pretty cool. Page 5 kicks off with a nicely characterized close-up of Mason's malevolent mug. Just if you missed out on what a bad person he is, what a villain, just look at that drawing of his face. And panel 5 gives us some superb silhouette work. Over on page 6, I was stricken by the overabundance of similar shades between the purple, as Rich pointed out, that even threw up question marks in my head, the purple shirts of Mason's men and Miss Elizabeth's pinkish dress. And panel 6 could have been an excellent romance comic panel where Mason catches the younger soldier having a pleasant chat with Elizabeth. If it weren't for the giant word balloon crowding just about everything out and generally ruining things. I mean, really, that every empty piece of space is a word balloon in that panel. This is ridiculous. Page 7 has a much more visually pleasing variety of colors going on. And I really like the odd little touch of the cameo shape of the semi-silhouetted tree in the background of panel 2. Just stuck out to me as something stylistically nice. Page 8 is generally pretty great, but I gotta ask, is that supposed to be someone getting shot in panel 2? You heard it in the synopsis. It's much more clear in the synopsis than it is in the panel. I'm not sure I've ever seen such a scene depicted so awkwardly. But panel 4 gives us a really well done long distance shot, and that final panel for the story is simply excellent, with a well rendered host and the gleefully homicidal cat about to make lunch of Mason's ocular orbs. Just, I like that, and it's drawn so well. In the end, the story made very little sense, even for a Weird War Tales tale. The evil empowering of our antagonist is pretty arbitrary. I mean, we just have Mason's word for it, so that's all we got. And the story feels like it could have lost a page or two easily. But there were enough, mostly artistic, high points to leave me with a positive, more of a positive aftertaste than a negative one. Plus, feline vengeance, technically. I'll take it.
The second issue in a row where an animal will get some payback on someone that has it coming. Slap me, then turn me into a cat? Oh, buddy, eat it. Well, it got a bit sloppy with the script with this one, as Max has already implied. Page 4, panel 5. No man will ever know how many towns Mason looted. And 2 panels later, we find out it's a dozen. Then on the same page, panel 5, which I actually like with the silhouettes in front of the town, the mayor says only one person lives in the house on the hill. The very next panel, we find out Miss Court's slaves had warned her the guerrillas were coming. Or should I make some comment about slaves only accounting for 3/5 of a person here? Now there's a history. As a deserter and a murderer, Mason got off light. It's implied Mason survives, but unless the paralysis is temporary or the slaves find him, he's probably going to die. Good. I've called out a bunch of panels already, so what's a couple more? Page 2, panel 1 of the battle scene with the cavalry has a lot of action. And because I always call it out, the slap, page 7, panel 4. Good on the kid for avenging Elizabeth and shooting Mason before Mason could shoot him. Moving on, we have 5 pages of ads before getting on to our next story. Spoiler alert, the ad I chose was not in any of those. The Traitor. 8 pages, script by George Cashdan, pencils by Ernie Chan, inks by Last Timer Ricardo Viamonte. France, late in World War I. Henri Caron peers through binoculars towards a gazebo and sees his brother, Colonel Francois Caron, in the arms of his wife, Jean. Henri seethes and vows that they will pay dearly for this insult. Hours later, as the regiment prepares for an all-out attack on the German lines, one of the other officers in the command tent raises a glass in a toast to victory. A bullet shatters it. Enemy machine guns and mortars begin to rake the French positions. The Germans know the position of every unit, down to the smallest platoon. The French are being slaughtered, and Colonel Caron is forced to retreat before his unit is decimated. It is many hours before he can establish a new command post with what remains of his staff. There is only one answer to what had just happened. Betrayal! There must be a spy among them that had given away the battle plans. But who? Another officer runs in with new intel. A complete map of their former positions had been found on the body of a German officer. Colonel Caron is quick to recognize the handwriting on it. Henri's. Why? The colonel demands of his brother. Henri's jealousy pours out of him. My younger brother has always had everything come to him on a silver platter. You were born with good looks. You achieved higher rank. And you had to have my wife too. At least now I have had my revenge. You have always been a fool, Henri, the colonel responds. That day you saw me with your wife, I had just told her that I am dying. The doctors give me only a few more months. You saw Jean consoling me because I had to tell someone. I kept it a secret from you because you have never been known for your strength of character. Henri is shocked and ashamed. Dying? What a jealous fool I have been. A fool does not deserve the dignity of a court-martial. Goodbye, Henri. Francois pulls out his sidearm and shoots his brother dead. He then orders the body to be buried where it lay in an unmarked grave. Let this tent be a mausoleum, a monument to the treachery of Henri Caron. Months later, Francois lay dying in a Paris hospital bed, talking to Jean. I did it for the honor of our family, he explains. I understand why you killed my husband, but I cannot forgive you, honor. Men have always killed and died for honor, but it is the women who end up sleeping with it. A small comfort in my declining years. The war soon ends, and the treachery of Henri Caron is all but forgotten, except for the local villagers. The eerie wind that blows through the weathered remains of the mausoleum is actually the plaintive cries of the restless spirit of Henri Caron. Then the time came when the Germans returned, a regiment led by Colonel Klaus von Engman, professional soldier and arch cynic. Learning that all the locals are afraid to go near the ruined tent, he decides to make it his temporary headquarters. It's the perfect protection from spies. Soon a table is in the center of the tent, covered with maps and movement orders. The attack against the Americans will commence a half hour before dawn. A sudden gust of wind bursts through the tent, sending the papers flying. Most are quickly recovered by the Germans, but an old woman collects those that are missed and gives them to U.S. forces. The Americans think such a bold move by the enemy is unlikely, but send patrols out to confirm the intel. Back at the tent, von Engman raises a glass to toast the coming assault. If it succeeds, we shall be able to turn the tide of battle, drive the Allies back to the sea. Artillery shells suddenly explode outside, and American armor and infantry swoop down on the Germans. Von Engman immediately realizes the situation as he runs outside. Mein Gott! We are surrounded! Trapped! The Amerikaners knew the location of all our units. The German retreat turns into a rout. In the stillness that follows, the old woman walks up to the tent, avoiding the broken and bloody corpses. Did all go well? A ghostly voice inquires. Oui, the information you brought me was more than the Americans needed. You will be sure to tell them that it was I who betrayed the Germans, the voice continues as the ghost of Henri Caron appears. My spirit is free to depart. Merci, Jean. I shall be waiting in a far happier place. A tear runs down Jean's cheek. Au revoir, my husband. At last, the name Henri Caron can be spoken with pride and honor. Killjoy. Now, I was trying not to killjoy the pickle helmets on page 2, panel 2. Maybe the World War I action takes place in 1914 and the World War II action takes place in 1944. But the text later in the story says things like World War I soon ended and nearly a quarter century later, which torpedoed that idea, and then further realizes that there's a tank in the panel attacking French positions. German tanks came along after Allied ones in 1918. I tried. Killjoy! Page 6, panel 1 has another of my classic gripes of things being colored red that shouldn't be, the German cross on a tank in this case. And another classic case of catching a killjoy in the third reading while script writing. Von Engman is in charge of a regiment, which at full strength, doubtful, is about 3,200 men. You ain't driving the Allies back into the sea with 3,200 men. You ain't doing it with 32,000 men either, even without the stifling Allied air superiority by this stage of the war. Moving on to the CNC. Viamonte doesn't exactly cover himself with glory in this last appearance in these pages. The way he does eyes throughout the story, never filling in the pupils, is stunningly distracting. I could pick damn near any panel, but the winner, quote, quote, has to be page 5, panel 3, the close-up of Jean's face. Jesus, are you a vampire? A zombie? An albino? That might be the worst panel in the book, or several books. But for the story itself, the name of Henri Caron can be spoken with pride and honor. Yeah, pretty sure it can't, buddy. Your brother had you pegged. Dead or alive, you're still a jealous traitor whose actions killed dozens of your countrymen. Go back to haunting your tent, quisling. That said, Cashtan does write a good tale of redemption from beyond the grave. He did the let's have a toast of victory thing twice, and both times the other shoe dropped immediately. I know Max is going to hop all over the stellar sound effects in this story. My favorite is page 4, panel 5, the muzzle of Francois' pistol firing with bang in front of it. Another solid panel is the first one on that page, the new French encampment where you see a casualty being bandaged up. It looks like its left foot is missing. I will say there's something about the combined Chan-Viamonte effort that gives it a very Charlton vibe for me anyway. Page 6, panel 5 screams it.
Yeah, I gotta say you're right there. And I didn't comment a lot on the sound effects, I realized in my script piece here, but I think it's just because I was enjoying them so much. I'm looking at a panel right now. They're just fantastic. And so we'll get to that as I go through here. To start off, though, of course, I got to start off with a nitpick. The story's attempt at a cold open page really doesn't work. It just seems to awkwardly appear out of nowhere, making you feel like someone had ripped the page out of the book or something. So I see what they were trying for, but it didn't work. And in panel 1, the host says, a balance is always what? Yeah, I think you're missing a word there. Or just really poor word choice. Like a balance is always, is that Yoda speak? What is that? Anyway, so yes, in panel 3, we get the first appearance of what Rich referred to already. Of the first appearance of these super weird eyes that haunt the pages of this tale. I mean, wasn't the first story supposed to be about satanic peepers? And I dropped a note in here as Rich was going on. I wanted to remember to talk about another artist, a more modern artist, Gary Frank, who is great. All his eyes, almost on every character, look like that psychotic who just got pushed one time too many. Somehow, everyone looks like a psychopath because of Gary Frank eyes. These aren't the same, but they're kind of close to you don't want to be around a person when they turn around and those are the eyes you see looking back at you. All right. So maybe this team should have drawn the first story. Page 2 does not start off at making up for the stumbling into that page, though, or that stumbling intro page, giving us a dull, barely half-hearted host and logo. I mean, you know that's a weak spot for me. So when you follow up an awkward page with a half-hearted logo and host, I'm starting to sink. But the rest of the page, turns out, is pretty great. The chaos of combat, the hovering panels, and we have a foreground fugitive, folks. You know I love those, and this is a good one. We kick off page 3 with more of the super weird eyes, but again, the overall page design is excellent, keeping a page of talking heads visually interesting every step of the way. If you've been paying attention, you know I love that kind of stuff. You're not going to be able to avoid having a part in a story where people are just sitting around talking, but it's the artist's job to keep it looking like something you want to keep engaged with, and they do that. So page 4 starts off with a really nice full row scene at the camp that Rich mentioned. It's just that good, though. It was really cool. And man, that's some pretty quick payback you handed out there, Francois. He gets some well-deserved guff for just that in panel 3 of page 5 as the newly widowed Jean lays down some anti-patriarchal perspective directly into Francois' chauvinist face. And she does so, of course, while making him wither under the gaze of her super weird eyes, too. In panel 5, we're told that the tent where Henri dies stands for years. And even longer on the next page. That's a hell of a tent. Even it's had the crap blasted out of it. It's just hanging out. So page 6 begins with yet another well-done full row shot of the World War II Germans rolling by Henri's tent. You know, this is becoming a thing for this story. And spoiler alert, it happens again. Panel 4 of page 7 treats us to an epic depiction of those same Germans suffering the onslaught of the ambush attack. Page 8 kicks off with, you guessed it, a really nice full row scene, the inking of which gives me pretty strong Jerry Ordway vibes. I mean, you got to see it. Like it really looks like Jerry Ordway inked that panel if you know his work. And you can especially see it in this story's second super awesome foreground fugitive. I mean, they're really serving up the hits for me here. It's hard to complain. Story-wise, there was a nice resolution to this morally conflicted tale, which had more depth and nuance than you might expect from a Weird War Tales yarn. And the art was, super weird eyes aside, pretty great throughout. It's good stuff. So there we go. And again, I just, I'm looking at it right now. That panel also, by the way, has some of those excellently used sound effects. The Jerry Ordway panel that I sort of didn't mention on my CNC because I was just having such a good time. But almost every page of the story, I'm flipping back through, it has great comic book sound effects in it. So I'll let that go and not rewrite my whole CNC on the fly here because, man, will that sound great. We'll move on instead to the letters page known in this magazine as the APO Weird War Tales section. And I chose a letter this time around that starts off like you might expect. It says, Dear Joe, I just read Weird War Tales number 50 and it left me with mixed feelings. The artwork by Dick Ayers and Alfredo Alcala was perfect, but the script by Steve Englehart drove me crazy. I guess An Appointment with Destiny, featuring The Coming Man, for avid listeners of the show, belonged to Weird War Tales, but somehow it didn't strike me as quite right. Maybe it was the Marvel Comics elements that we pointed out in the story. Say, how about some stories concerning World War I, like in this variation? What are the odds of a monthly status for Weird War Tales again? And that letter comes from Charles Haskell, 15 West 139th Street, New York, New York, or as the Earth 2 podcast would say it, New York, New York. 10037. And Joe responds and says, the frequency of any comic depends on its sales. If sales warrant, we'll be thrilled to return Weird War Tales to a monthly schedule. Yeah, you cheapskates, so get your friends to buy the magazine. Until then, we'll just have to content ourselves with an 8 times a year schedule. As far as stories of the First World War go, as soon as one of our writers brings in one we feel fits into WWT, you can be sure we'll publish it. And they did. They did it just now. The one thing I wanted to point out about that whole letter, because, it's not that, remarkable letter all by itself, but I learned something. I learned something today. I learned that Weird War Tales was on an 8 times a year schedule, one that I was not familiar with. Like, you don't hear about that one in comics. You hear it monthly, bi-monthly, quarterly. You don't hear 8 times a year, but I guess you do when you're fighting the Weird War. So that's my letter.
My missive comes from Charles R. Hoffbauer Sr. from West Palm Beach, Florida. Dear Joe, the latest issue of Weird War Tales, number 50, contained a serious mistake in story content. The story, An Appointment with Destiny, contained a glaring error midway through when the history of the Spear of Destiny was being given. And it is mentioned that the spear was the property of a Roman soldier who witnessed the crucifixion of Jesus Christ and who lost the spear in a gust of wind. So far, so good. Then it was stated that it went to some famous people, including Alexander the Great. Wrong! Alexander the Great ruled the world over 300 years before the birth of Christ, having conquered the world and died by 323 BC. In addition, Hitler was not a young man in 1924, as we've shown him to be. He was born in 1889 and was therefore 35 at the time. Not quite the young man or boy you show him as. Mistakes like this ruin the overall flavor of the story and distract from the main plot, which was, incidentally, pretty good. And the response was, yours was not the only letter pointing out the error in Weird War Tales number 50. Many wrote in to tell us of this boo-boo. We could claim artistic license or say that the inclusion of Alexander the Great enhanced the general story, etc., but we won't. It's a mistake for which we apologize, and we'll try to see to it that similar mistakes won't happen again. And yeah, obviously, everyone that listened to episode 50, I didn't catch either of those killjoys, and I probably should have at least caught the Hitler one, but what are you gonna do? I can't do everything around here. So, what's next? Ads. Ads are next, right? Okay. Sorry, Max, but I had hermit crabs too. Amazing, air-breathing, crazy crabs. Millions astounded by friendly land crab. A friendly, air-breathing, crazy crab is the most amazing pet you'll ever own. As gentle as a pussycat, it lives on land instead of water, does not bite unless mishandled, and quickly gets to know its owner. Absolutely clean and odorless. Sorry. It actually wears clothing, an empty snail shell that changes like a costume and is one of the longest lived pets on Earth. A truly intelligent pet. Give it a name such as Little Caesar, Leapin' Linda, Happy Henry, Sandy Claus, Tippy Toes, Sexy Snooky, Mary Baby Tiny Tim, etc., and see how well it responds when you call it. I mean, I can't even go on reading this. I mean, this is a full page ad. The top half is largely a silly drawing of a friendly hermit crab bursting through the page with Susie on its shell, and 2 photo reference drawings under the title. The level of stunning bullshit in this ad can scarcely be believed. I mean, there's a full page ad for sea monkeys in this book too. Why not order both at once and be completely let down? This has to be the most outrageous ad I've selected in months for the show. The new live pet sensation is sweeping America. No water or fishbowl needed. They live on land. Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, I saw that ad, and I know I've brought up my hermit crab thing a few times in the show and probably 1,000 times in real life. So I kind of I can't pick that one, but I got to say, this is probably the ad that was circulating when my brother and I got our hermit crabs. I was around 6, and this ad probably existed before then somewhere. So this is probably the ad I saw. that started me going, we got to get a hermit crab, we got to get a hermit crab. And then my brother and I, as everyone's heard a million times, started the war of our hermit crabs eating each other until my mom said, enough. They don't mention that in the ad. Get one that's slightly larger than the other one and see who gets eaten. Like that, they left that out. But as for my ad, since I had to let Rich have that, and that Crazy Crabs ad is a visual delight. Just the drawing of Susie on top is amazing. So, you know,
one of the things that going on, it says best of all, crazy crabs have a lifespan of up to 70 years. Oh, the hell they do.
Not if it's smaller than the other crab. Has a lifespan of about 2 nights. Yeah. So on a somewhat lighter side of things, my ad that I picked, I had to go with this one. It's a full page ad for Hostess Cupcakes starring Batman and Robin in Birds of a Feather. Okay, we open with a scene of the Statue of Liberty being carried aloft by a flock of pigeons. And you got Robin going, stealing the Statue of Liberty? Holy cow! Pigeon woman, we'll clip your wings. The name's Pigeon Person, Robin, you imitation bird. You'll never stop me. We'll see, Batman says, you foul-feathered fiend. Tomorrow, we steal America's last statue. And an America without statues is an America without a past. Ha 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 ha. Does that sound familiar, people in 2024? Does that sound painfully familiar, that line of reasoning there? Hey, I bet it does. Anyway, next panel. The Bat Computer has plotted Pigeon Person's next plot. She plans to pluck Mount Rushmore. I guess that counts as a statue in this strip. Okay, anyway, we've got a counter plan, but we'll need your help. You can depend on us. Will do, Batman, says all the authorities gathered suddenly in the room. I guess it's serious business. So next panel, Pigeon Person is descending upon Mount Rushmore, and she says, in case we didn't recognize it, there's Mount Rushmore, a sitting duck waiting to be taken. Ha ha! Next panel, you've got Batman and Robin flying in on the Batcopter. 3 fighter planes flying overhead. I'm sure Rich will tell me I called them the wrong thing, but shut up. And, Pigeon Person being caught under a net by what's been dropped from the Batcopter there. And she screams out, no, not delicious Hostess cupcakes, devil's food cake, wonderful cream filling. My birds will do anything for that. That's right, even betray you. Pigeon Person, get ready to have your feathers plucked. Pigeon Person, you'll be caged for a long time, as her own pigeons carry her off in that net that Batman dropped on her. Thanks to our planning and your own birds. I can't blame my pigeons for betraying me. Even a bird brain knows that a Hostess cupcake in the beak is worth any 2 statues in the street. And you got a picture of the Hostess cupcakes, and you got the scroll that reads, you get a big delight in every bite of Hostess cupcakes. That, people, is as good a Batman strip as you're ever going to get. That's almost as good a comic book as you're ever going to get. I mean, it's a work of art, and I don't even say that ironically. If the current Batman books were as good as this and had this tone, maybe I would actually be reading some. Bring back Pigeon Person, you cowards. That's all I got to say about that. I could go on for 3 hours about that comic. That might be my new favorite Hostess ad ever. It's got all the puns from the Batman show, and I promised I wouldn't keep going on. So we're going to step to a section, appropriately enough, given my promise, called Got Any Last Words? And I will keep talking, but about something else for a change. I'll say, this issue really needed a Day After Doomsday 2-pager. It really did. And that first story could have easily spared the space. As it is, Soldier of Satan doesn't even come close to living up to its own title, hobbling the impact of the unexpected depths of the Traitor. A tragically flawed issue, but not one that I regret reading or anything like that. There's plenty of good stuff sprinkled throughout both stories, as I'm sure you've noticed. I would pick, I got to say, I forgot to put it in the script, but I would pick the Traitor as the winner here because, again, even though, it doesn't wash that Henri has redeemed himself, there's more depth to that story than we usually get. So you have all that. Plus, I lied. You have Pigeon Person. So overall, I like this issue quite a bit.
Yeah, I'm not usually the one of like killjoying ads or something like that, but I would have really enjoyed trying to watch a pigeon person fly away with the goddamn mountain. But hey,
Hey, they made it off with the Statue of Liberty, so don't underestimate, man.
What about the statue? What about the Crazy Horse? Crazy Horse is being carved right down the road.
You better get Batman on the case and have him stake it out, man.
Yeah. My copy of this comic is in rough shape. I must have pulled this one out of a $3 for $1 box in the mid-90s. And it's kind of fitting for the content of the book. Both of these stories are what us old farts used to call fair to middling. Bottom half of the pile for sure. Like Max, I'll go with The Trader for the win, but in a 2-story issue, it's a pretty low bar. Kind of want the next issue already.
I kind of want a Pigeon Person miniseries already. But hey, we've done it, folks. We've covered the entire comic book. The letters page, the ads, the actual stories, the cover. We left no stone or statue unturned, all right? We've made it to what I like to call the scuttlebutt section of the show, where we just kind of wrap things up. Remind you that we have an awesome Facebook page made so by my esteemed co-host, Rich. So get on Facebook, look for the Weird Warriors podcast, and hang out there and have a great time. It's unlike most Facebook pages. Rich will give you something to look at, to do, and talk about over there. And there's a lot of great people to hang out with. So that's my ad for the free Facebook page. Goes pretty well with the free podcast, don't you think? But there's some stuff that isn't free, if y'all ever get around to ordering any of it. If you go to redbubble.com and you search the Weird Warriors podcast, you can, I promise you, get our amazingly cool logo that was drawn and designed by Bill Walko of the Hero Business online comic strip. You can get that image emblazoned on a plethora, a myriad of merchandise. You can get it on a hat. You can get it on a cat. You probably can't get it on a cat unless they have cat sweaters, but then still, good luck doing that. You can get it on a whole bunch of stuff, and if you get a picture of it, of anything you buy from that site with our logo on it, and send it to the Facebook page, Rich will get you a Sam Star. I'm not going to make him repeat what that is. You should know by now. So that's it for me. That's the scuttlebutt, but we're not done yet. Again, Rich, being the generous type, has a little something more for you. It's called a teaser for the next episode.
Weird War Tales 55. You can't try 55. Blood chits. Reanimated statues. Lots of history minutes. Vote for your favorite intel report. If your favorite don't win, it ain't our fault.
Yeah, it's Pigeon Person's fault. Yeah, man.
Speaking of reanimated statues.
Yeah, see, there we go. She's gonna be there. She's gonna be there, people. This is bait for the Pigeon Person. I love how I got through that whole thing, by the way, because I'm gonna keep talking about the ad. Sorry. I got through that whole read without mentioning the subtext of why it would be statues that the Pigeon Person goes after, and how they didn't mention that, and I didn't mention that either because I was so caught up in how much fun it is. But that adds an extra level of humor to that strip that I can't believe I didn't even think of this whole time. So there you go, people. Pigeon Person, Weird War Tales 55. Will she be there? There's only one way to find out. And you can find out with us. Who are we? Well, we're Max and Rich. We're the Batlin Bros. We're the Weird Warriors. We host the Weird Warriors podcast, where both of us promise to make war.
No. What?